Are you going to be a new renter and you're debating moving into either a purpose-built rental building or a privately owned rental unit? Stay tuned for the pros and the cons of each. Let's start with the pros of the purpose-built rental buildings. So usually they're very well located with good access to public transit and amenities. They're usually very spacious, mostly because a lot of these buildings are older, and in 1965 a 500 square foot floor plan for a one bedroom just wasn't a thing and it didn't exist, so you can often get into a spacious unit. They're usually cheaper, partially because they're a bit dated, a little bit older. They might lack some of the modern finishes and that kind of stuff, but they also often include a lot of your utilities, so your month is kind of a fixed lump sum every month. And lastly, your tenancy is more secure. Your individual unit doesn't have an owner per se, it's more of an owner for the entire building. And so that means that your landlord can't want to occupy your unit for personal use or for a member of their immediate family member, nor could your individual unit be sold with the buyer wanting to use your property for their own use either. But these buildings don't come without their disadvantages. I mentioned earlier that they're often older buildings, and so that means that the finishes inside the unit are often dated. They sometimes may also lack some appliances that a lot of people like to have direct access to, for example, a dishwasher or ensuite laundry. Most people aren't super thrilled about the idea of doing their laundry in the basement of a building with a coin-operated machine. Communication with either a landlord or a property manager is often poor to non-existent, so getting something fixed in your unit is often quite difficult. And lastly, again, due to the age of the building, sometimes general building maintenance and upkeep is poor, and it may be just due to a lack of money available, but sometimes it's just due to the fact that the buildings are aging and it would just cost too much to make them have a certain appearance in the lobby, in the hallways, and etc. Now let's talk about the privately owned units, and that could be something like a condo in a condo building, or potentially a duplex or a triplex, and you would occupy one unit of that home. So quite often these units are modern with, again, more recent finishes and updates, and they often have those creature comforts that people are looking for example, the dishwasher and the ensuite laundry. If you're looking at moving into a unit in a condo building, many condo buildings have great amenities. So access to a small gym, to maybe a pool, you've got maybe concierge or security, lots of visitor parking, those types of things. And lastly, you may, although not always, but you may have a higher likelihood of having a responsive landlord. So it's just you and one kind of direct contact for somebody who you can communicate with if you need something fixed or if you have a question or whatever the case is. But privately owned individual units don't come without their disadvantages either. For example, those modern finishes, those creature comforts that you want to have don't come without a cost. So usually units of these type are much more expensive than something that you would find in a purpose-built rental building. Secondly, the size or the layout of the units may be much, much smaller or much less functional than kind of a spacious unit that's in one of those older rental buildings. Lastly, your tenancy is not nearly as secure due to the fact that because your unit is privately owned, after your lease is up and you're on a month-to-month arrangement, the owner or the immediate family member could wish to occupy your unit for their own personal use, or they could sell the house or the condo to a new buyer, and that buyer wants to use it for their own use as well. I want to readdress about the purpose-built rental buildings is that your tenancy is not totally secure. A friend and former client of mine recently reached out to let me know that the building that they are living in, which again is a purpose-built rental, has been sold to a developer. So at some point in the future, that building is going to get demolished and knocked down and rebuilt into something else, likely a condo building. Now, I think, don't hold me to this, but I think, legally speaking, the developer of that new project has to be able to provide living space for those former tenants to be able to come back at certain rental rates and etc. But from the time of demolition to the time of reconstruction, it's likely been years and those people have moved on. So I wouldn't say they're as likely to come back, and maybe the developer is banking on that. But regardless, Renters in Toronto span all ages, and now more than ever, we've got a ton of downsizers who are looking to cash out of their family homes and move into the rental market, but they want to stay within Toronto. So knowing what options exist and knowing the advantages and the disadvantages of each is, I think, a good thing. I'm Jamie Harnish, Toronto Real Estate Navigator with Bosley Real Estate. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.